I do happen to, this is worth pointing out, I think that everything's granular. You know, quantum particles are granular. I'm not exactly sure what the fabric of space is yet.
It is.
Pretty sure it's granular. I'm pretty darn sure time has to be granular too. And I came to that from two different directions. So when you think of something, it's two totally logically, I'm thinking of something totally different, and I come to the same conclusion both ways. It's kind of doubly convinced.
There's actually some evidence that it's not.
Blah.
Recently been finding
There's that idea.
there's actually some physical evidence that it is.
La la la. Okay.
There goes that chapter.
Yep. Sorry to kill your chapter.
Okay, can we talk about that though? Like, maybe not right now. For sure. I need to know that.
Yeah, that could kind of wreck your chapter a bit.
Okay, so since I've looked a lot at chaos theory and just studied it and read about it and looked a little bit at the math and stuff, the math works out because numbers are discrete and there's discrete feedback loops happening. There's like one state leads to another state. Well, what the heck's a feedback loop? In reality, it could be a engineering diagram with an arrow that feeds back. But what is that really? Time isn't rewinding and feeding back. It's almost like there's a state of time, and there's something about that state that tells it how to get to the next state. If time was purely analog, I can't understand at all how chaos theory would play out. So I wish I could spend another hour explaining what I mean by that, but the math to me can't possibly work out unless time is discrete. And then the other angle that I came at it was I was reading about quantum particles.
There is a quantum of time. You know, there is a minimum amount of time that you can have in the universe. You can go any lower than that. So in that sense, time is, it's quantum.
So he thinks there is, you think it's analog, he thinks it's digital. So
Yeah.
this is a discussion we should have like over beers, totally.
Yeah, definitely.
We need
Actually, the paper I read wasn't theoretical.
beer plus quantum.
Yeah.
Here, plus quantum
We'll have all the answers.
No, it was a physics paper, but it was based upon an actual experiment. It wasn't theoretical. They had actually done measurements and found that it appears that space is not in fact granular. In other words, it wasn't like, well, the numbers work out better this way. It was actual measurements.
It was bordering on metaphysics, wasn't it?
No. It was actually a very simple physical experiment that they did. It seems to point to continuity of space.
We'll talk over some beers later about analog versus digital time. Okay, now, where am I? Okay, so predeterminism. Okay, so the only way I can define predeterminism that I could possibly imagine what anyone's talking about is that it means pre-calculated to absolute precision and stored somewhere for retrieval. If the universe is predestined, pre-calculated, what good would that do if it's not stored somewhere so that it can rewind and play back? I mean, none of this makes sense to me. I think that the physical act of predetermining is impossible and even paradoxical for reasons listed below, and I have a million reasons I've listed. And that the notion of predetermining is nothing but undefinable. I may as well state now that I find God and free will to be in the same undefinable category. I just don't understand it. That isn't to say that they are meaningless on the level of philosophy or language. All these terms, God, free will, predetermining, they're all very valid words as language. They have meaning. They portray some kind of emotional meaning for us. But they aren't definable in any logical sense. So here I've listed the impossible paradoxes of predeterminism.
Free will.
What was that one? So number one, quantum fluctuations are impossible to determine, much less predetermine. We can only determine their probabilities, and that would be along the lines of predicting, right? Which is very different than predetermining. Predicting implies a possible inaccuracy, which is contrary to the whole idea of talking about predeterminism in the first place. When we say the universe is predetermined, we really literally mean it's destiny that's locked in. That's what people seem to mean by it. Absolutely can't predetermine quantum, so that's one super strong argument against it. Dynamical processes, in other words, chaos theory, may need infinite decimal places to compute to absolute precision. So that was another thing that led me to think that just the stuff of space-time is discrete. Because I can't imagine the math working out, you know, things have decimal places, it's got to end somewhere.
Isn't that the same argument that they made before calculus?
I have no idea.
Pretty much. Before they had
Was it a
related
good
rates.
argument?
No.
Oh.
So far when they invented calculus.
Why does it have to end somewhere, though?
Yeah, in other words, the fact
Because
that
I
they
see-
couldn't model things that were discrete before calculus and related rates and whatnot doesn't mean that's the way the world really worked. It was a limitation of our ability to understand how the world worked.
Exactly.
I can ask my mom about this because she's written a calculus book and she's a mathematician. Calculus is one of her specialties.
That's her about.
And she showed me lots of graphs where something's approaching a level, so yeah, it's not totally discrete.
Yep.
Calculus.
Less beer.
Ask mom.
Calculus plus theoretical algebra.
Discrete. If time is infinite, then predetermining would never end. Allow us to relive our fate. If and when the universe is successfully predetermined, does it rewind and allow us to relive our fate? Right?
Feedback loop.
Okay, I'll read more. So it gets a little more technical. Any algorithm that sees itself like the universe computing itself falls into an infinite loop. The only exception is if we created an arbitrary stopping condition to break out of the recursive cycles, and this is at the cost of precision. In the case of the universe, which is a dynamical system, anything short of perfect precision will lead to wildly inaccurate outcomes. Think butterfly effect. The only hope is to perform the calculation outside of the system, so something outside of the universe now has to do the predetermining calculating, so that it doesn't seed itself. But in the case of the universe, nothing can be outside of the system. At least that's my view, since we would simply redefine universe to include it. Therefore, predeterminism is logically impossible. You can't argue with that mouthful.
What'd she say?
Even if there were a way to accurately predetermine the outcome of the universe, here's the key. It would need to be stored somewhere on a universal hard drive to be recalled from, to give the idea of predetermining any validity.
It's impossible, it's just outside of their consciousness
Our comprehension.
or comprehension.
Obviously
Exactly.
there is an answer, and obviously it's really, really weird. So,
As
who
compressible
knows?
as infinity or negative infinity or never hitting zero or...
I think there are a lot of weird things that we're going to discover, obviously, but I just don't think it's responsible to talk in terms of predetermining, because there's just no reason for it. Here we go. And so on and so forth. I hope I can rest my case with the predetermining nonsense. There's plenty of other interesting area to debate without it. In other words,
Skip it.
do we really have to go there?
Doesn't
But it
make
comes up in
sense.
every conversation I have. I also hope that I've properly stressed that in any debate about free will versus determinism, we need to be aware of at least two different levels of reality at the same time and constantly take into account that the other person is more likely than not speaking on a totally different level than we are. Usually it results in an annoying problem of semantics, which is sometimes the only reason for our disagreement. Certain language or concepts have an entirely different meaning when talking about the teeny tiny world of quantum physics or the microscopic, macroscopic world of dynamical systems, chaos theory, or the level of our abstract conscious perception, or on the large-scale world of general relativity. Words have different meanings when talking about philosophy and feelings, or when talking about the fundamental reality of things on a scientific level. So 99% of the time when you get into this conversation, you're on two different levels, and you argue about semantics, and then you get frustrated and go home.
Or have beer.
Or go have a beer.
Go have a beer, yeah.
Okay, oh good, I'm almost done. Free willers display compassion and a strong sense of morality in their arguments, but have a fear of trying to understand their fundamental reality. And maybe that's not true. Determinists.
No.
He said it's not true. He said no.
closet indeterminists sound like robots in their arguments, but have a deep and meaningful understanding of where morality actually comes from and are empowered by it. In addition, they intuitively understand that we can live as we've always lived in our conscious realm. In fact, they hardly give it a passing thought. Nothing is controlling anyone on a fundamental level, after all. Things are just happening. There is an action-reaction, a cause-effect, but on every possible scale of complexity, at every coordinate, at every moment, rippling across the entire universe, every which way. No action, nor cause, nor control comes from any focused central location. Nature is anarchy in its purest form.